What's up, YouTube? Doing the fourth update on the 2015 FZ09 swap Grom. So kind of skipped a lot of stuff on the updates. Just kind of got into other stuff and pretty much just knocked a lot of this stuff out and didn't even think to film it, honestly. But yeah, the engine is in despite it sitting on the dolly for now. The engine is in, all the mounts are done. The engine does actually run, and basically all of the major fabrication is all done. So I think the last video, either I was getting ready to take it off the jig or it was already off the jig, but I had the main parallel frame rails done and my kind of supports in the front built. I have since boxed that in, and I have added a kick down front mount, and I added a brace just to add a little bit more rigidity to it. I don't think these two were going to be an issue, but being that the CP3 is a lot heavier than the other parallel twin swaps I've done, kind of wanted a little extra something in the front just to make sure that nothing does happen if this would go, if I did have like a weld break or something went wrong. So anyhow, got my kick down, got my support tube made, and then in the front, this is actually just 1/8 inch angle iron, and then I welded in my own braces. I have a nice little mounting hardware there. So yeah, that was the front. It was actually fairly straightforward. I didn't have any issues with doing the kick downs or the top bar with the bodywork. It obviously does kind of flare out the bodywork just because the engine is wider and the frame rails are a tad wider than I'd like them to be, but running this 1 inch OD 1/8 inch wall thick tubing, it's strong enough. I don't really want to go with anything smaller, so it's kind of the nature of the beast. So anyhow, that's the front frame. Next thing is the radiator setup. So I am running the R7 radiator out of the wrecked bike from my previous swap. This is just a mock-up one. I do have one that's nice, shiny, new. I've got some plates on the side. Gonna probably paint it black just so it kind of blends in a little bit. But anyhow, I have the upper radiator is actually mounted up into here. There's a little area to get back to it. Working with really limited space here. It really gets tight in the front end when you're trying to fit somewhat of a bigger radiator. I did think about doing a CBR 300 radiator, which is just a little bit narrower and not as long or tall. But seeing as this is a 900cc and that's a 300, I did the 300 on the 700cc. That worked perfectly, but this, I really don't want to deal with cooling issues. So the R7 is a little bit smaller than the FZ09, and the FZ09, I did try to fit it. It's just not gonna work. The bodywork would be way flared out. And I will show you how the bodywork fits on the other side. Just let me get to it. But yeah, the radiator's in there. It's tucked up nice. For my lower mounts, I've got some of the old brackets off the Grom frame that I've kind of bent up. And I had thought about doing like a welded bit of 1/4 inch rod here that just goes straight to it. But when you take the engine out of this frame, it's actually got to pull forward and then drop out. So I didn't really want the radiator mounts to be, or to interfere with the engine at all coming out, because then if I bend them, I got to try to bend them back. And my goal is to really try to get this radiator centered. And if I'm bending the dang radiator mounts every time I have to do something to the engine or pull it out, or even for final assembly, just did not think that was a great idea, even though it would be so easy just to go from here straight to here. So I'm kind of going a different route with it. I don't know, maybe some people will laugh at this or tell me I'm stupid, but the header studs are actually right there, super easy to get to from here. So actually took another bit of one of the old Grom brackets, bent it up. You probably can't see in there, it's too dark, but it's right there. But anyways, so I'm gonna go from the header stud out, 1/4 inch rod, weld it up, clean it up, paint it, and you actually won't even really notice the radiator mounts at all. So that's the radiator. The hose on the right side of the bike, I'm gonna be able to use or reuse the FZ09 radiator hose, and then this hose up top I think will come across, or I'm sorry, point the camera in the right direction, but hopefully kind of across and down, maybe fit through here and go straight into the radiator hose set up there. Kind of a pain in the butt because it's pointing down, but I think I can link enough kind of pre-bent tubing or radiator hoses together to get it back up there. And that'll hopefully look super clean, because then you won't see the actual radiator hose at the top at all once the bodywork is on. So that's the idea and the setup there. I am just using the R7 fan that's wired into the stock FZ09 harness. And moving back before I show you the other side, talk about the engine for a second. I did have some issues getting this thing running. It had been sitting for 5+ years with old fuel sitting in it. So I did take the tank off, take the fuel pump out, replace the actual pump inside of the fuel hat. And then I'm kicking myself in the head for doing this, or yeah, just face palming. But on the injectors, I have had luck with eBay buying used injectors and stuff, and simple stuff. Maybe injectors aren't that simple, but anyways, I had found a set of 3 injectors on eBay that were cleaned and flow tested. They even came with a sheet that saying that what they were cleaned and flow tested, had all the numbers and everything on them. Turns out after replacing the throttle bodies, spark plugs, going to a different header, well, I didn't really mess with the header setup, but I went to a different header setup. I replaced all the sensors on the engine, even the stator crank position sensor. Only thing I really did not replace is the coil packs, because I knew it was getting spark. But essentially, those fuel injectors they would run while you had it kind of like wide open. Anything past like idle, it would run okay. And then at idle, it would just spit and bang and die. So anyways, after basically fighting with that for 2 weeks and losing a ton of motivation, I had a set of injectors on order from Partzilla, brand new OEM. Slapped those in, started up just fine. Had to adjust some of the throttle position and accelerator position sensors, but after I did all that, ran great. So the engine is good. It sounded healthy. I got it all the way up to temperature. I had the FZ09 radiator hooked up and everything, and it got up to 200 degrees. Fan kicked on, so really happy about that. Was really worried that this engine was going to be no good, but it idles fine now, runs just fine, so extremely happy. Side note, still not sure how I feel about the triple sound or the CP3 sound. It's kind of growing on me, but it's kind of not. I don't know. I just really like the R7 parallel twin, that cross-plane crank. So anyhow, in the back, kind of covered it up, but I think in my previous video you saw this is my parallel frame rail. Goes back to a plate that I welded in. And this was another big step, was doing this rear frame area. Just gonna let you guys know right now, if you guys are saying this is not a Grom because it doesn't have any Grom stuff on it, you're right, because it's pretty much just the body panels now and the wheels. But yeah, what's left of the factory frame is basically this bit and that bit and this rear section. So on the CP3 engine, there's one mount there, obviously, and another mount here. Well, this mount is way farther back than like the parallel twins that I've done. So I had to actually figure out a way to notch out the stock factory frame and weld in a new plate to put that engine mount in while still having everything else supported. So this is kind of like the final idea I came up with. I probably thought about this for 2 or 3 weeks and kind of just decided I needed to go with something. So this area here is actually boxed in so that the engine mount can sit back as far as possible to get the front sprocket somewhat close to the swing arm pivot, as well as I needed to get the engine high enough so that the chain didn't just drag on the swing arm, which I don't know if that really matters. There's another swap Grom where his front sprocket is way low and he's kicked the chain once, and I'm not sure if that's because of that or because of the master link. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure that I had the front sprocket pretty much in line, or if not just a little above the swing arm pivot. When I mounted all this stuff up and ran the chain cleared the swing arm just fine. It was like just barely touching the swing arm while it was unloaded, while the weight was off the bike, and then when you sat down on it, you had plenty of room. So I can always go to a 17 tooth front sprocket as well, and which I might need to on this anyways, just because I'm sure it's going to be ridiculous with the gearing and the power already. But we do have that option, and we are clear on a 16 tooth, so happy about that. And that all kind of worked out. Next thing was the rear, or the lower engine mounts. Nothing fancy there. It's just 1/8 inch plate kind of kicked out. I will have a brace in the middle of them to kind of hold it together, but nothing really fancy there. I'm not trying to like make this rocket science or anything. I need engine mounts. I have a welder and I have an 1/8 inch plate, so that's what I did, and it kind of came out all right. I just need to clean it up. A lot of my welds are obviously newbie self-taught welds, but making do with what we got. Then coming to the back, I'm not sure if I had the swing arm on when I did my last update. I don't think I did. Anyways, so this is a Evil Swing Arms 6 to 10 inch stretch. Give me a second. And essentially I have this, I'm not going to say custom because some people think that's overused, or I'm not going to say one-off anymore because now there's 2 of these, but this is essentially a special order swing arm that utilizes a 20 millimeter rear axle and kind of adjusters. So along with doing the 20 mil axle, I also asked them to add some extra bracing in the swing arm. And this does also have a air tank built into the middle brace. So that is a key part in this to hopefully keep the front end down, and pray to God this thing hooks just a little bit because I think it'd be really fun. But anyhow, on this deal, everything looked good. I got my wheel bored out to run a 20 mil bearing in the wheel, and then I'm working on getting the hubs actually modified to run multiple bearings in the hub and the spacer that I run on these. Just because the guy that bought the R7 swap, he kind of blew up the rear hub assembly, and I don't think it's any fault to his own. It's just none of these bearings, this is actually an oversized one, but none of these bearings are meant to probably take the amount of weight and speed that this Grom or the last Grom I had. They're just not meant for it. So it's kind of again, the nature of the beast. You kind of have to keep up with the bearings on these guys, and there is a chance that one of them could just tear up, and pray to God the back wheel doesn't lock up at speed. But me personally, I do not push these Groms past 100 miles an hour. That's my cap. I don't do it very often. I like to just zip around, 0 to 60 or just to get on the highway. So that is a weak link, the bearings now. Even though the 20 mil axle is never going to break. Let me take a step back and say that on some of my previous Instagram videos, and I know I have one YouTube video, I talked about the 12 millimeter swing arm pivot bolt being the weak link. So I'm actually having a 15 millimeter swing arm pivot machined for this, and I did find hardened steel sleeves that are just big enough to fit a 15 millimeter pivot with running the factory or Evil Swing Arms needle bearings. So really happy about that. I think that is going to be kind of the cool thing about this bike. I don't know many other Groms that don't have like a different rear frame section that have like a bigger than 12 millimeter swing arm pivot. Might not have been an issue, but we're going to upgrade it and kind of put some time into that just in case. So the rear wheels, I think I've already talked about that. I'm going with the OG wheels. They're going to be black. They are wrapped in Kenda KD1 tires. I really like these over the KD2, and I'm going to sound like a little bit of a ricer, but this pattern just looks a lot better to me than the KD2s. And the KD2s have like flames on the sidewalls. I don't know. Also, I think these did a little bit better in the rain. They have a little bit more tread, but anyways, that's just the ricer kind of I really don't want to use this words, but aesthetics that I like about that tire, and I felt really comfortable on that tire as well. Now, before I show you the other side of how the bodywork fits and everything, or at least one panel, want to talk about the suspension. So Racing Bros suspension, if you guys don't know about them and you own a Grom, you should check them out because they are right up there, if not better than Öhlins in quality and performance. And then their customer service is just awesome. Kay over there, he helped me out picking out the front shock setups, or fork setup, and the rear shock setup, and got me hooked up with one of their brand new, I think it's maybe released now, but brand new springs. So in the front, they are still stock right now, but I will be running a Racing Bros upgraded cartridge and spring that will, I think it's a 7.5, and I believe it's Newton meters. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure about that whole sizing things, but they're 7.5s in the front. I'll probably run 30 weight fork oil, and then they will have adjustable rebound and compression. And then in the rear, I really wish I had the rear shock here to show you, but it's a really nice piece. It's their new Edge HLR rear shock. It's got an external reservoir. Again, this one's just the stock one. What I'm gonna be running is the HLR, the Edge HLR. But anyways, yeah, they sent everything over. I did some test fits on it, and I actually had to send it back. And it has a little reservoir that sits on the back. And with my rear fuel tank setup that I'm gonna go over here in a second, it was just too far back, so I had to get them to clock the reservoir up a little bit to make room for the rear fuel tank. And again, Kay's awesome over there. He hooked me up. I think I spoke to one of his sales people or customer service people, and they told me, hey, it's going to be like $200 to send it back, have it adjusted, get it all set up for you, and send it back. I was like, okay, I have no problem paying that. You guys already hooked me up on some of the other suspension stuff. So maybe a day or two after that, they got the shock, and then I got another email saying, hey, again, appreciate your support and, you know, working with us. Realize now that we're doing the whole sponsor thing for your build. It's actually just going to be $50, and we'll ship it back, no problem. So awesome customer service. Those guys are really great to work with. I met them up at the Barber Small Bore Rally. Super fun and awesome guys. It was just cool to hang out with them. He really liked that R7 swap, and it's really cool that we could come together and do something on this, which is a little bit more unique of a build than even the R7 swap. So the last thing I want to go over on this side before I show you the other side is my fuel tank setup. So yes, this is a fire extinguisher, I know, but on the fuel tank setup, I am going to be running part of the factory tank, pretty much what's remained, or what's remaining here. I might add some in the front, make a little line that goes back, but it will have the factory fill port. This will hold maybe a half gallon, maybe 3/4 of a gallon, but it will fill there, and then I'll have that all sealed up and everything, and then it'll have a transfer line at the back of the tank that just gravity feeds into this fire extinguisher. And I know some people don't like the whole fuel tank and the swing arm deal. That's what I'm going with. I've done it before. It worked. It's just better than having 3/4 of a gallon of fuel on something you're not going to be able to ride at all. So anyhow, we'll have our transfer line come down. It will gravity feed into this bottle, and then I will have the factory FZ09 fuel hat mounted into the bottom of this. So the fuel pump and everything will be in this tank. Everything from that tank will be filled and gravity fed into this tank. I will have to cut this down a little bit. I'm gonna try to run as much of this tank as possible. Obviously I want it to look decent, but I do want to have enough fuel on this to do the tail of the Dragon, and to not stop every like 50 or every like, I don't know, 40 or 50 miles. I want to have a little bit more than that. So going to be doing that. That is going to sit in the swing arm. I will have my mounts that'll have isolators on it. And the last thing before I show you the other side is that this tank is just a hair too wide to fit into this area here because of these extra braces. So this does have an air tank on it. Probably will not be using the air tank function of this bar. I I'm gonna have to cut a scallop out of the rear of the swing arm. Just take a scallop out there so that this tank can fit straight down and not have any clearance issues and not be really crammed in there. So the goal on this, I think with most of these Groms, is probably gonna be a 2-gallon plus fuel tank. If I could fit a little bit more than 2 gallons on this one, I would be really happy. If we kind of hit about 2 gallons, still be happy. As long as it's got enough fuel to do the tail of the Dragon and cruise a little bit, I'll be happy, because again, this is not like an average like 300 swap or even parallel twin swap. I know this engine is going to be a lot harder on fuel than anything else that I've built, and the fuel capacity stuff, it kind of is what it is. I have played around with the idea of putting like a little fuel tank in there, but I'm not sure if maybe a quart or 2 extra fuel is going to make that big of a difference. But I am thinking about it, and it's always a possibility. So this is how the body fits. And again, shout out to Racing Bros. I did order a personalized or custom graphics kit for this. I guess it's a G09. We're not doing the whole G9 thing. It is a G09, which sounds funny anyways, but I had to do something different. But yeah, so Racing Bros livery. All that I have on here right now is just the top cover and the side panel, and it still needs to be adjusted a little bit. I'll show you, but this is essentially how the bike will look with the body panels on. Now they are bulged out, but the engine fits inside them, and I really did not have to. Actually, right now I have not modified this panel at all. I will clearance the bottom a little bit because it is touching the actual engine block, but yeah, so factory mount there. I will have the factory lines, and then this is where it's kind of bulged out. So down here, this will be pulled in a bit once I get all my hardware done. So it'll be a little bit bulged out at the bottom, maybe a finger or 2 in there, but it actually fits surprisingly well. And then I obviously don't have my little triangle piece, but the triangle piece actually fits perfectly as well. I just had to shave part of the outer black piece of it, and the inside with all the graphics and everything is untouched. So really, really happy about that. I suppose on the next update, maybe when I get the actual radiator all mounted and maybe the fuel tank in it, I will drop this engine cradle and do like a walk around of how it's actually gonna look. But it is turning out really nice. I'm really happy with it. The graphics, Primal Graphics hooked me up. I think they're out of North Carolina. I'm not sure on the graphics. It's not exactly what I had in mind. I think the Racing Bros is kind of cut off a little bit, and you can't really read the actual logo on the bottom with that tiny piece or the tiny triangle panel. But it's different, and I wanted to do something for Racing Bros for hooking me up. Hopefully, I know Barber Small Bore Rally in Birmingham, Alabama is no more. Hopefully there's another mini bike kind of event that I can take this to and kind of do some promotional stuff with them. That would be really, really cool. So yeah, guys, that's a walk around. I know some people wanted some longer videos. This is probably longer than anyone's gonna watch, but for the guys that do enjoy this and want to see how I kind of went about doing some of this stuff, it might not be the right way, but this is for those guys. So I really appreciate all the support, and I think I'm going to try to do another update a little bit sooner once I get my headlight figured out, get the bodywork mostly on, and get the fuel tanks on it. Again, thank you guys for watching. I hope, just let me know what you guys want to see, if you want me to go way more in depth, or if this is pretty good. Maybe a little bit shorter than this, I would probably imagine. But yeah, if you haven't, check out my Instagram, Grom Swap the World. Y'all take it easy.